I'm currently working on a number of different projects. In relation to the questions around poverty, I'm interested in looking at sort of breaking down some of the stereotypes around sort of people who are poor, and I'm hoping to do this by doing a qualitative study looking at freedom of information regarding sort of how many poor people are actually using the welfare system, and in particular how many immigrants are using the welfare system, because in Canada there's been this concern that too many immigrants are coming to Canada and abusing the welfare system, and I really want to try and challenge that idea. Other areas of my work involve immigration enforcement and looking at the criminalization of immigrants through increasing sort of penalties against migrants who come to Canada illegally. So those are the two key areas that I'm working in right now. The work that came out of the paper that you're talking about on the criminalization of poverty really looked at what's gone on since a lot of the welfare reforms have taken place in British Columbia, right? In 2002, there was a whole new set of reforms, much of it which very punitive, right, which targeted poor people, and the argument by the government at the time was that we needed to encourage more people to get off welfare and to get back into the labor market, right? What I wanted to do was to see, how much has things really changed? What's the reality on the ground for people who are on welfare right now, right? And unfortunately, the news isn't good, right? Insofar as, increasingly people are finding it very difficult to live with the new rules of accessing welfare, right? They're finding that it's increasingly difficult to maintain their benefits. A lot of people are being cut off, even temporarily, because for whatever reason they've violated some rule of welfare that they were not aware of, right? So what we're finding is that these new rules have now increasingly caused a lot of problems for poor people. There are a number of ways in which we can think about tackling the problems of poverty, right? Certainly, I think we need to rethink, the way in which we think about, what poor people do, and we need to break down this sort of binary construction between this idea of deserving and undeserving, right? I think it's a socially constructed category, and I think that the people that get sort of categorized as either deserving or undeserving don't necessarily fit, their realities don't fit into these categories very well, right? And it's simply a political sort of construction that serves the needs of politicians more than it does poor people, right? So that's the first thing. And then, related to that, of course, is really the need to challenge public perception about who poor people are, right? I think, there's so much anger towards poor people by the general public, right? This idea that poor people are this, cause of all the social problems that middle class people have to deal with, and I think there's a real sort of misunderstanding about where these problems are really emerging from, right? And then finally, I think, with the problem of criminalization is, I think it inhibits sort of creative thought about how to think about alternative solutions, right? This default response to use the justice system, to use prisons as the sort of, a warehousing solution to social problems, I think has to stop, because it's so expensive. We can't afford it. You can't keep going down this route, right? You just cannot keep, jailing people at thousands of dollars a day and think that this is going to solve the problems that we have. It's obviously directly relevant, right? Because I found that, looking at the question of penalization and more broadly the question of social control is increasingly an important issue to examine in light of, so many ways in which we are now currently regulated, right? I think it's really important to recognize that so many governments now use the justice system in a very punitive way towards those who are the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, right? And I think states need to be called to answer for, why they're taking this approach, right? There needs to be greater accountability here, right? Because I think too many people are suffering at the hands of what the state sees as legitimate state action.